Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing an Open Grade League Pokemon that I've been sleeping on for far too long, and that Pokemon is Shadow Sealeo. Shadow Sealeo was a favorite Pokemon of mine to run during the interlude season, but this season I haven't really given it a go. There were other Pokemon that got buffed, and other Pokemon that I honestly thought were better. However, I built a team today that absolutely went off. I ended up having a 90% win rate to re-hit 3200 ELO, with a team featuring Unova Stunfisk, Shadow Sealeo as the save switch, and a non-Shadow Malamar. So, without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we pick up a disastrous lead, Stunfisk into Quagsire. I save switch into Sealeo, my opponent responds with the Tinkaton, and so far the team is working exactly as intended. Shadow Sealeo can surprisingly put up a pretty good fight into Tinkaton. The regular Sealeo can survive a Gigaton Hammer pretty comfortably, but I have the rank 1 Shadow, so I always have to run the Shadow. The good news for me is the Powder Snows have added up enough to the point now where a Surf should actually just about take the knockout on a Tinkaton. Tinkaton will put up the shield, and now I can put my opponent into a very uncomfortable 50-50 shielding scenario. I'm going to build up to a Body Slam plus a Surf, and now my opponent's going to have to call, is it the Surf or is it the Body Slam? I decide to full send the Surf, my opponent calls the bait, and just like that, switch advantage has been obtained. In the back, my opponent has a Zapdos, and this game is over. My opponent can never afford to shield the Zapdos because it has such a terrible matchup into Stunfisk, so they're forced to fully sacrifice the Zapdos and try and get the 1v3 sweep with Quagsire. I go straight for the Body Slam with Sealeo. I just need whatever chip damage that I can get. Sealeo will finally get knocked out, but look at how Sealeo just completely took over that game. It knocked out an entire Tinkaton, an entire Zapdos, and it got a ton of damage onto a Shadow Quagsire as well. Now I can send in the Stunfisk, fire off the Mud Bomb to pressure the final shield, and then Malamar, one of my favorite Pokemon ever, will be able to close out the game. In comes Malamar. My opponent just simply does not have the damage needed to get rid of this Malamar. They fire off Aqua Tail, Malamar tanks that very comfortably and makes it to the foul play. So even despite a pretty awkward lead and save swap situation, this team's still able to claw its way back and get the win. Hopping into game number 2, we've actually got a perfect mirror lead, Stunfisk into Stunfisk. Most of the time, Stunfisk leads have flyers behind it, and if that's the case, then Sealeo is going to be very, very strong in the back. Occasionally, they do have double Bug Bite, and that would obviously be very tough for this team to deal with. Stunfisk is this team's answer to Bug Bite Fortress. So if Stunfisk has been KO'd and there's a Bug Bite Fortress in the back, that would be pretty awkward. Luckily, most Bug Bite Fortresses that I've encountered are on the lead, as people typically like to play them in an XAB style, where they're trying to brute force switch advantage no matter the cost, and then just set up their backline with alignment. Here, my opponent makes a very nice catch. I try and CMP tie the Mud Bomb, but they end up catching it onto their Fearow. But with a flying type behind a Stunfisk, Shadow Sealeo is about to absolutely feast. Sealeo, even in a Shadow form, has quite a bit of bulk to it, so it's able to withstand the Drill Peck very comfortably. I can never get farmed down, and then I can just build up to the back-to-back Body Slams. Their Stunfisk is in a range where I should be able to take a knockout on them. They actually put up the shield, and I decide that Sealeo has done its job. If I shielded, my opponent could have gone for a combo play with the move on the Stunfisk, but instead, I end up just letting it go, and in the back, they have Togekiss. One of the reasons why I'm running the non-Shadow Malamar is non-Shadow Malamar actually beats Togekiss. Togekiss will typically be running Aura Sphere and Psyshock, which means they can only hit for neutral damage. While Foul Play is going to be resisted, Psywave hits for massive neutral damage, and to add insult to injury, we catch an Aura Sphere onto our low HP Stunfisk. Back in comes the Malamar, and just look at the Psywave. Togekiss got absolutely destroyed. There's no path forward for my opponent, and they will concede the match. We get the dream lead in game number 3, Stunfisk into Morpeko. My opponent save switches into a Corviknight, and they are just completely core broken to smithereens by Stunfisk. Ideally, I would love to land a Discharge, tank a Payback, and then pivot into Sealeo, so I can save a pretty healthy Stunfisk to neutralize that Morpeko. They fire off a Payback. I look to try and get the 0-turn switch, but unfortunately my damage had not registered yet, so it would have been a 1-turn switch instead of a 0. In that case, I decided to just stay in. I'll take the knockout with a Discharge, and whenever my opponent reveals their final Pokemon, I'll just pivot in Sealeo to bait back out Morpeko. Their final Pokemon is revealed to be Gorgeist. In comes the Sealeo. Sealeo will have to put up a shield, but I can inflict some massive damage on Morpeko if it switches in. My opponent's staying in, and look at the Powder Snows go! Shadow Sealeo hasn't even landed a charge attack yet, and this poor Gorgeist is getting torn to smithereens. Gorgeist forced to throw an alignment, otherwise I would outpace and make it to a second Surf, and I've actually done enough Powder Snow damage that a Body Slam, double resisted, will actually be able to KO Gorgeist. Sealeo is just an absolute force of nature. Back in comes Morpeko. They still have the shield to hide behind, but they're going to have to give it up as Shadow Surf hits way too hard. I pivot back into Stunfisk, snipe with a Mud Bomb, and it turns out we don't even need Malamar for this game. That's how dominant the Stunfisk Sealeo pairing is. Morpeko's going to need to throw back-to-back Psychic Fangs if they want to take the knockout, and then once they've done that, they'll be completely energy dry, they'll be at 1 HP, and I can just farm down with the Shadow Sealeo. This is a game where I don't have to show my final Pokemon if I don't want to, so let's keep it a mystery. We're just going to throw one Powder Snow with Sealeo, farm down Morpeko, and take the win. Hopping into the next match, picking up a very scary lead, Stunfisk into Shadow Hydreigon. This team is ABA weak to Shadow Hydreigon, as both Stunfisk and Malamar have losing matchups. The good news for me is that Shadow Hydreigon, even though it's very powerful, is very frail, so I'm able to get an early shield. Frequently, Shadow Hydreigon is paired with stuff that's weak to Electric in the back, so I'm actually going to throw a Discharge here, predicting a catch, and a catch on the Corviknight. Oh my goodness, the prediction pays off in a massive way. I'm more than happy to stay in here with the Stunfisk, make it to a second Discharge, and really just ramp up the pressure on my opponent. Discharge will get them very low, now I can send in the Shadow Sealeo. My opponent can get to 1 Payback or 2 Air Cutters. I'm going to no shield in case they go for the double Air Cutter, but they just go for the Payback, and I'm able to get a big farm down. I know I have a ton of energy on the Shadow Sealeo. What does my opponent have in the back? Well, I'm not going to find out just yet, because they bring in Hydreigon. Hydreigon launches Brutal Swing, they get a shield from me, they pivot into Aegislash as their final Pokemon. I think that I'm in a very good position. I can save energy on the Sealeo and pivot into the Stunfisk. It's going to be very difficult to charging down, and the moment my opponent throws this energy, the game is over. Because they have to switch into the Blade form. I can switch into Sealeo and click Surf. If they shield to put Aegislash back into shield form, then the Hydreigon doesn't have any shields to hide behind, and my Malamar up a shield wins the game. And if they no shield, well, then they're just getting Powder Snow down by Shadow Sealeo. Hydreigon is a terrifying Pokemon, but luckily we survive it and we're able to get the win. We move to the next match, Stunfisk into another Shadow Hydreigon, and this just goes from bad to worse. Shadow Hydreigon, not the Pokemon that I want to encounter with this team, and unfortunately we've seen back-to-back. But people using Shadow Hydreigon on upper boards is a pretty frequent occurrence because people realize how strong this Pokemon can be. They land a Brutal Swing, I land a Mud Bomb, I save switch into the Shadow Sealeo, and my opponent's going to respond with Corviknight. I'm wondering if this could be the exact same team as my previous opponent. Although if it's Aegislash in the back, I would have anticipated them to bring the Aegislash into the Shadow Sealeo. I'm going to shield, anticipating they full send the Payback, and I do get that call right. That's a pretty big swing of momentum. I farm up a ton of energy, these Powder Snow shredding through the Corviknight. I'm hoping I can get away with a Body Slam here. Body Slam does take the knockout in the back. It's Shadow Typhlosion. That is not what I was expecting to see whatsoever. I fire off the Body Slam bait, get the shield, send in the Stunfisk. My opponent is going to pivot, and they send in Hydreigon. I need to try and exit with a move, so I go for an Undercharge. I click a few bubbles on the discharge. It's going to be a race Thunder Shock versus the Dragon Breath. We exit with the charge attack loaded, and that's going to win the game. We needed a perfect Undercharge, and that's exactly what we got. Now I can just send in the Malamar, click no shield. They're forced to burn 50 energy on a Blast Burn, and then I can close out the game with Sealeo. Back in comes Sealeo. We don't even need the Surf. Typhlosion is very frail, so Body Slam should do it. Body Slam knocks out Typhlosion, and we survive back-to-back Hydreigons. We move to the next game, hopefully no Hydreigon this time, but this time we see the polar opposite, the destroyer of fun, Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff is a Pokemon that this team does very, very well against. Stunfisk is very good at absorbing energy from Wigglytuff, and I'm actually able to get a very early shield. Typically, how I like to play out Wigglytuff leads is trading charge attacks and then hard pivoting into Shadow Sealeo. Shadow Sealeo up energy is a very difficult Pokemon to answer, especially considering that Jellicent has suffered an immense fall off in usage at higher ELO. Wigglytuff goes for the Swift, they send in Charjabug, but even Charjabug is not going to be a big fan of this energy. Sealeo launches the Shadow Surf, shield comes up from the Charjabug, Charjabug will fire off energy, and I'm putting up the shield because I know that I have quite a lot of energy stored on this Sealeo. So I throw one Powder Snow at the Surf, this is going to be getting the Charjabug very low, and because I have a very high rank Sealeo, they can't farm me down. Charjabug into Malamar normally is a terrible matchup, but they have no energy and they're very low. So this is Malamar's time to shine. In comes Malamar, full Psywave down. I now exit with a ton of energy, and I can Psywave them into superpower range on their Wigglytuff. So I'm just going to take the knockout. They reveal in the back, they have their own Stunfisk. I bank a superpower and then switch into my Stunfisk. It's very important that I switch and make the Mud Bomb before they make theirs, because landing that charge attack means I now can no longer lose this game. They would need to have so much residual energy to be able to outpace the Malamar, and unfortunately for them, they just simply don't have it. And because I'm the non-Shadow Malamar, I'm outside of Mud Bomb range. They're going to go for the Mud Bomb, hoping it will knock out, but I have a very high rank non-Shadow Malamar as well. So I'm able to withstand that damage very comfortably, make it to the Foul Play, into the Superpower. Double Foul Play could have done it, but may as well fire off the Superpower. And that's going to clinch yet another win. We move to the next match, Stunfisk into Shadow Camerupt, and this actually is a pretty scary matchup. Seeing Camerupt anywhere makes me think that it's probably going to be the team that I featured in yesterday's video, with Camerupt, Galarian Moltres, and Aegislash. Now, Camerupt can actually win the 2s against Stunfisk with a double bait, so I have a very tough call to make. Will they bait, or will they full send? I call the full send, they end up going for the Rock Tomb bait, and suddenly things are tilting out of my control. Mud Bomb is going to be double shielded, they immediately undertap, and they fire off another move. I put up the shield, I get Rock Tomb baited twice, and that is absolutely disastrous. I fire off Mud Bomb, but this is double debuffed. Camerupt can actually hang on. Camerupt is able to survive. Camerupt banks energy, save switches into Galarian Moltres. I bank a move, but in doing so, I switch too late. That allows Moltres to outpace Sealeo by 1 turn, and I'm just simply not surviving the Brave Bird. This has been a game of misplays so far. Had I done 1 Thundershock and switched, I could have made the Surf before the Brave Bird and got some critical damage. But instead, I got basically no value out of my Sealeo, which is pretty bad. My opponent should have Aegislash in the back as their final Pokemon, and Malamar does do pretty well there. However, my opponent still has a Camerupt with energy. If I'm going to win this game, it's going to involve getting a catch onto the Stunfisk and being able to Psywave down Camerupt. Aegislash has the Shadow Ball now, and I do get the catch. That is step 1. My opponent should look to pivot out of the Aegislash and send back in the Camerupt, and I have to commit to the farm down. I need the energy for the Aegislash. I farm up, they pivot in Camerupt, but Camerupt survives. 1 HP remaining. They make the Scorching Sands, knocking out the Malamar, and unfortunately, this team loses its first game. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty nice lead, Stunfisk to Shadow Primeape. This team almost always features a Shadow Sealeo safe switch, but against Primeape, it's very safe to safe switch a Malamar. And that's because it's impossible to structure a team with a Primeape lead that has a Bug Bite user in the back, because otherwise, common leads like Togekiss would just be an auto lose for that team. So I can very safely safe switch the Malamar, and my opponent sends in Aegislash. If Aegislash is their Malamar answer, then they are just triple weak. Surely it's something in the back that does not want to be superpowered. Aegislash is down energy, and Malamar is just so relentless with its pacing. I'm already up to 2 foul plays, and 2 foul plays will actually be enough to skip the knockout. I decide to go for good timing. My opponent will fire off energy right before they're able to make the back-to-back, and I decide that I'm just going to go for a double shield, because when Aegislash is in his blade form, even though they do double resist Psywave, I should actually be able to Psywave down because they're now very, very frail. My opponent is going to pivot out into Licky Licky, and oh my goodness, they have nothing for Malamar. Malamar at the back-to-back superpowers, they shield the first, but unfortunately there's more where that came from. Even at -1, this is still going to do a ton of damage onto that Licky Licky. I'm just going to farm up energy with the Malamar and get the catch onto the Sealeo. So Malamar has been preserved. My opponent has shown time and time again they do not have an answer for this Pokemon. Here, I end up waiting a turn to go for the CMB tie. I know Body Slam will not knock them out here, but I just wanted to trap them on the field and trap them with throwing that energy, as I'd rather take the energy here on the Sealeo. They go for an undercharge on the Shadow Ball, and that sets up a perfect farm down for the Shadow Primeape. But the bad news for my opponent is they've already revealed that they're running Ice Punch. And Ice Punch and Rage Fist, neither move can take the knockout here like Close Combat could. So I can safely send in the Malamar, take that move, and then take the knockout with the foul play. From here, it's pretty easy cleanup duty, as all my opponent has left is a very low HP Licky Licky and an Aegislash. And in this position, my opponent will end up resigning the match. We move to the final match, leading Stunfisk into Pangoro, and this is a pretty okay lead for the Stunfisk. Ideally, as Stunfisk, you would like to try and CMP tie them as they go for the close combat, so that way you're actually able to pressure a shield. But this opponent ends up going on 8. I'm always going to be no shielding the first. They go for the Night Slash. I try and CMP tie, and I do get the CMP tie. That is very, very good for me. My opponent goes for the close combat, so I'm forced to give up a shield, but they're going to have to give up a shield right back if they want to hold on to the Pangoro. They will do just that. They save switch into Grumpig, and I have the perfect response as in comes Malamar. Malamar has a pacing advantage in this matchup, so as long as you don't give the Grumpig a huge energy head start, the zeros are very, very clean. Grumpig will always go for the Dynamic Punch as it is the cheaper move to go for and does still pick up the 2-hit KO, but since I switch fast enough, I'm able to make the Foul Play on the Charge Attack Priority tie. So Foul Play is going to secure the knockout, and I'm going to look to try and pivot out the moment Pangoro comes in. In comes Pangoro, and I actually get a CMP Sack Swap, getting the catch onto the Stunfisk. Night Slash is going to connect. That does barely anything, but this Mud Bomb is going to inflict some pretty severe damage. Mud Bomb no shielded by the Pangoro. Pangoro is going to make a last-second charge attack, and I have a tough call to make. Do I burn the final shield here? I say yes, calling that it's Tinkaton in the back, but that's a weird-looking Tinkaton. They reveal their final Pokemon to be Aegislash. I was not calling Aegislash in the back, and that could make life a little bit tricky. I decide to bank a Mud Bomb for later, and then I send in the Malamar. Malamar will get some big damage with Foul Play. Foul Play will get the Aegislash pretty low. Aegislash fires off energy pretty immediately, and that is very good news for me. Normally, Shadow Powder Snows would do basically nothing onto Aegislash, but in its Blade form, it's highly vulnerable. So I wait down the timer, and when it hits 0, I send in Shadow Sealeo. These Powder Snows are absolutely shredding through the Aegislash. Opponent tries for a catch that they will not get, and I can just send in the Stunfisk, and my opponent is never going to be able to farm everything down. Discharge will get the shield. I'm able to make Discharge number 2, and that's going to seal it. A pretty scary endgame facing an Aegislash when I didn't have any shields remaining, but we're able to make it work and get the win. All in all, this team ended up working out amazingly for me. Across the sets that I played, I went 13-2, and I've since played another game and won that one as well. So we are betting pretty close to a 90% win rate with this team on leaderboards, which is frankly absurd considering the high level of competition. I think Shadow Sealeo is extremely slept on right now, and Sealeo's ability to just neutrally take over games really impressed me. Even in its bad matchup, Sealeo was able to put in an incredible amount of work. I do think that Stunfisk's typing and coverage is very strong in the meta, but I really hated the Stunfisk plus Flyer lines. I felt like they were just too RPS for my liking, and I feel like this is a rare Stunfisk line where I feel that it's actually pretty flexible. Malamar and Sealeo are both very strong at overcoming their bad matchups, and they do also support the Stunfisk very well if you run into ground types like Quagsire or Diggersby. So I really liked this team. This team I kind of came up with on the fly just because I wanted to use Shadow Sealeo, and I always like using Malamar. I'm very happy the team ended up working out as well as it did. I do think that regular Malamar is better than the Shadow right now. Another big plus of the regular Malamar is you do survive an Aegislash Shadow Ball from full HP, whereas the Shadow will always get O-Code. On top of that, regular Malamar having a better Togekiss matchup I think is a pretty big plus, just because that's a matchup that you're going to end up in quite frequently, and Malamar's ability to control that matchup can be critical to navigating a lot of endgames. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.